Pay attention, for you're about to hear the greatest story of the jungle. It was a long, long time ago, in a land far, far away. There was a colony of ants that were bigger than any ant you've ever seen before. They were probably about the size of one of your fingers. You could say it's not a big deal, but as far as ants go, they were huge. And these ants were very, very advanced. I mean, ants today, they live in colonies where they have separate jobs and they communicate with each other, and they build cool structures underground with ventilation, with waste disposal, water management. I mean, ants are pretty advanced as far as insects go. But these ants were on a completely different level. These ants had a society very similar to our society. And so it happened that the queen of the colony knew that the colony had to expand. And as ants do, the workers fed some royal jelly to some of the larvae. And when those larvae eat that special jelly, they grow up to be queens. Of course, there can't be more than one queen in each colony. So what happens is that they fly away, and if they're lucky, they create colonies of their own. But fate would be that one of the workers made a tiny mistake and fed a larvae that was supposed to be an engineer a little bit of royal jelly, just a tiny bit. And as soon as he found out his error, because that larvae was not scheduled to become a queen, he just went on by his business and actually gave the royal jelly to the right larvae. So this larvae that had eaten a little bit of royal jelly didn't have enough to become a queen. But the royal jelly did something unique that only queens are known to do, and queens don't use that for much except for communicating with the colony. It gave the ant super special powers. The ant could communicate with our other animals, of course other ants too, but especially with any other animal, just by connecting with them from a higher perspective beyond the body of the ant. Some people call it telepathy, but telepathy is something about the brain, and the brain is a physical piece of matter. It's flesh, just like your toe, or like your hair, or like your boogers.
Yeah.
Telepathy. Yeah, telepathy doesn't come from matter. Telepathy comes from your true self. You're not a piece of matter. Matter is just a vehicle you use to experience this reality. And so this ant was very much awake and aware to the nature of reality. And he decided that he was going to use that to his advantage. And as soon as he figured out he could do all of these things, he started showing off to his friends. Look, you see those birds that are always bothering us? I'm going to make them go away. And he connected with the birds, and he projected the image of 1,000 ants eating at them. And immediately they were perched on a tree branch, looking down at the ants like they were about to eat them. And immediately the birds took off. Oh, wow, that's amazing, said some of the other ants. And that was just a coincidence, said some. Coincidence, huh? Well, you'll see. And as the day passed, the ant started performing more and more tricks. In one case, he even controlled a bobcat to come close to the ant mound, which they rarely do because those ants are huge for a bobcat, and then they have a very nasty bite. And our friend, the ant that could control things, climbed up on top of the bobcat and went out for a stroll through the forest. Everybody was impressed, and they were showering this ant with gifts and asking him for favors. This ant became the favorite of all the ants. Anything he wanted, he would have. If he wanted sugar, if he wanted a special piece of fruit, all the other ants would bring it to him, just so that he could do tricks for him and entertain them, or sometimes even do interesting and important things. Like this one time, there was a vulture eating some dead animal, and all the ants were looking at the vulture like, "Oh, that would be good to eat. It's a huge dead animal here." And so the ant that had powers said, "Okay, look at what I can do, guys." And so he made the vulture feel and think as if that was not a safe place to eat his meal, that he needed to take the meal right on top of the ant mound. And so the vulture took the dead animal in its claws and took off flying and flew all the way right up on top of the ant mound, which was huge, and dropped the dead animal. And as soon as that happened, thousands of ants swarmed the dead animal, and the vulture thought better than to try to fight thousands of ants and flew away. The whole colony was elated and so happy to get such a huge meal. They rarely did. And they kept showering this ant with lots of gifts and presents. And so the ant had always a ton of things to eat. But that wasn't necessarily the best deal for ants. You know, ants are supposed to eat a balanced diet. And because this ant could get anything he wanted, he was always asking for sweet things. And so he started getting sick. And even though he was sick, he was still performing tricks, of course. But his body was getting tired and old. And as the weeks and months passed, you know, these ants, they usually have a lifespan of a couple of years. But this ant was only like 6 months old. And he was already so fat and so destroyed from eating all those sugars all the time that he could barely move. And he would use his mind to trick other ants into carrying him to places. The ants didn't mind. They were next to the celebrity ant, the most amazing ant that had ever been born. The queen once summoned this ant. "Come to me, my child," said the queen, and the message reverberated through the whole colony until it reached the celebrity ant. "The queen is calling you, the queen is calling you," said all the ants. And when the fat ant heard the calling, he could barely walk. So he ordered other ants to take him to see the queen. "Leave us," said the queen. And the fat ant and the queen sat face to face. Now, I'm translating this conversation because ants don't speak in words. They use chemicals and things like that. But basically, this is what was said. "You have great powers. I don't know how you got them, but I can understand them. I too feel the same connection to everything around me," said the queen. Of course, because the queen had eaten off the royal jelly when she was a larvae all the time. This ant, on the other hand, barely got a little bit of it. And so he developed all the powers, but not so much of the intelligence, and certainly not the life purpose that the queen has, because the queen lays all the eggs to grow the colony and keep everybody aligned and working together. "Well, it is what it is, my queen. I was born this way and I cannot help it, so I decided to enjoy it." "And enjoy it you did," said the queen. "I can see that. You can barely walk." "Oh, that's not a problem. I can always get some of my friends to carry me around." "But you think that is wise?" said the queen. "Wise? Who needs wise when I can get everything I want? All I need to do is ask for it, and I get it." "So you can control all the other creatures?" "Yes," said this ant. "Can you control yourself?" said the queen. "Of course I can," said the little ant. "Then how did you end up like this?" "Like what?" "Come on. You can barely walk. You're not feeling well. You're only 6 months old. You should live to be 2 or 3. All my childs live longer than you, and you don't seem well. Oh, this. This is nothing. I can just change that any time I want. Well, we'll see about that. But for now, I tell you, the ant that can control entire colonies can be regarded as famous and a hero. But the ant that can control itself, that ant is truly invincible, said the queen. And with that, the conversation ended. Our fat friend thought about that a lot. And then he got hungry, and he ordered his friends to bring him more sugars and fruits and sweets and things. And so his life was cut short. At the tender age of just 7 months, more than 2 years before his time, one day he ate his last piece of sugar, and he was done. His body was no more. And so he went to visit the queen once he was outside of his body and said, "My queen, I know you can hear me because you're connected with everything outside of this dimension. I was out of the physical dimension just like I was." "Of course I can," said the queen. "Well, what can I do to get back here?" "What you can do to get back here is agree to start again. I will gift you one of my eggs, and you can take it and become one of my workers. But you shall never again do what you did. You have to learn your lesson. You were the ant that controlled entire realms, but you could not control yourself." "You're right," said the identity and the energy of that ant. "Thank you for giving me a second chance." And with that, the queen laid another egg, a very special one. And our friend the ant followed that egg. And as soon as that egg was ready to receive this energy, he went down inside of the egg, and poof, he was born again as a normal, regular ant. And he started listening of stories of the super powerful ant that once lived among them. And those stories sound very familiar. He felt like he knew that ant. Because from his new perspective, without having eaten the royal jelly, he was no longer connected with everything. And so he could only see the world from the eyes of an ant. And so he forgot that he was that ant. And so over many generations and over many, many times coming into this dimension, it took him thousands of years to finally learn to control himself. And when he did, he realized he didn't need to be an ant anymore. And he went on to explore new identities in this dimension, jumping in and out of it, as we all do when we die, when our bodies die and we come back. If we choose to, of course. And that was the story of the ant that could command any other creature but himself. The end.
Best story ever.
Thanks, Bikini. I love you.
I love you.
Good night, baby.